Yo, microphone check 1 2 1 2. Ladies and gentlemen, you are checking out Battleline Podcast, episode 118. My name is Ian Scotto. Chris Peranto is out this episode, but do not go anywhere because we have Ben Morgan on, who many of you know from Battleline Tactical. We talk Battleline Tactical. We talk tactical training. We talk Tanto Vodka, which he is responsible for putting out there in the market, and especially if you live in Colorado, you may be seeing it around because that's really where it's been circulating for the longest. However, you can now buy online, which we get into this episode. So really great stuff. Thank you as always for checking us out. Means a lot to us, all of you who leave reviews on Apple Podcasts. Now, I wanted to mention this. Chris Dykos, who we had on the show recently, sent me this. And he is a very smart guy, and he's not a guy who's going to send me any bullshit, quite honestly. And this certainly isn't bullshit. This is right from NIH.gov. And many of you may have seen this headline: Cannabinoids block cellular entry of SARS-CoV-2 and the emerging variants. And the abstract there is, as a complement to vaccines, small molecule therapeutic agents are needed to treat or prevent infections by severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, and its variants which cause COVID-19. Affinity selection mass spectrometry was used for the discovery of botanical ligands to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. Cannabinoid acids from hemp, cannabis sativa were found to be allosteric as well as orthosteric ligands with micromolar affinity for the spike protein. In follow-up virus neutralization assays, cannabigerolic acid and cannabidiolic acid prevented infection of human epithelial cells by a pseudovirus expressing the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein and prevented entry of live SARS-CoV-2 into the cells. Importantly, cannabigerolic acid and cannabidiolic acid were equally effective against the SARS-CoV-2 alpha variant B.1.1.7 and the beta variant B.1.351. Orally bioavailable with a long history of safe human use, these cannabinoids, isolated or in hemp extracts, have the potential to prevent as well as treat infection by SARS-CoV-2. Now, I definitely struggled to get through some of that. I am certainly not a biologist or a scientist or an epidemiologist. However, you get the gist of the article that there are, or I should say the abstract right there from NIH, that cannabinoids do have benefits in terms of helping your immunity, just in general. That doesn't mean we're making any specific claims here or anything, but we just found it interesting. And if you're anything like me, and the reason I mention this, if you really have no interest in smoking marijuana, getting high, but you would like to experience those benefits in terms of the immune system, you got to go with Ned because it is the purest full spectrum CBD, full spectrum hemp out there, extracted from USDA certified organic hemp plants, grown by an independent farmer named Jonathan in Paonia, Colorado. Check it out. They do great work. They also have their distress blend with CBG, which is known as the mother of all cannabinoids. All different types of products on there that you're going to want to see. And these aren't blends of different things mixed in with full spectrum hemp. This is just pure full spectrum hemp. And it really is recommended by a lot of doctors out there. And that's why they work with medical field experts like Dr. Caroline Leaf, Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and Dr. Will Cole. As always, just go to helloned.com/battleline. And with that, you'll be supporting the podcast and also getting a discount for being a listener. And these companies like Ned are who keep us going. We do not ask for donations or anything like that. All that we want you to do is support our sponsors, and you're going to get the best products out there on the market because that's who we work with. So HELLONED.com/battleline. Thank you, Ned, for sponsoring our show and offering our listeners a natural remedy for some of life's most common health issues. Let's go.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City. From planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space. A podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tanto Vodka.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline Podcast.
The switch is on. Battleline Podcast. Ben Morgan on, lead firearms instructor with Battleline Tactical and a retired Army Ranger and private military contractor. Most recent venture, which all you guys have been seeing, is Tanto Vodka. And if you read, actually, this book, which just, even though we don't have video, we will have video soon at some point, but you guys don't see it, but this book that happens to be right next to me, The Patriot's Creed, which I was reading a little bit of because it was reading up on Rob Jabber, who we're going to have on. But yeah, Ben's story is documented in The Patriot's Creed. And actually, I was looking the last time that we spoke to you, both Chris and I, was episode 69, which was pretty much an entire year ago. Does it feel like a year to you?
You know, in a way it does, but then again, in a way it feels like it was last week. It's like I said, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, it's Thursday. The outdoor range that I go to is open on Thursdays. It's like, let's see if the wind's howling today. Maybe I'll go shoot. And then I look at my phone and it says it's Friday. I was like,
yeah,
dude.
All the days kind of meshed together. The reason I remember the last time you were on, because it actually did inspire me to do a float at the float place by me, which is actually what it's called. And it made me think, it's been a year since I've done that. Maybe I'm due to do it again. Maybe every time Ben Morgan is on, I have to go for a float. I may have to do it.
What'd you think?
Well, as I told you, it wasn't my first time, so it wasn't like a new experience for me. It was, I think it was my third time, but it's cool, man. It's a good experience, and for those who don't know, like the sensory deprivation to actually kind of process some thoughts. As I said on the last show with you, I had never had the hallucination aspect or anything like that, but it's interesting. I like it. It's something I like to do now and again. Like I said, it may be overdue for one. I think like every year that works for me. I'm not one of these people who can do it every week though.
There you go. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've gotten in there and done that as well. The place that I was going to, I went back down there, and it was just closed. And you know, I mean, but that's just kind of the way things are now. You don't know what the deal is with a restaurant or any sort of customer based services. They're dropping like flies.
Yeah, we're in pretty much year 3 of this, and it's interesting you mention it because I finally got COVID with this past week, and I'm perfectly fine now. Pretty much right after recording the last episode with Tariq Azim, and yeah, I was just tired for a couple of days. I'm good to go now. You know, I don't know if you want to credit it to being that I'm younger. It's the weaker variant. I am vaccinated, not boosted with the original vaccination, and I'm personally fine. Did you end up getting COVID? I don't even remember if you did at any point.
You know, I got really, really sick like 2 years ago when COVID first appeared on the scene. And my doctor, I remember even saying to my doctor, "Oh, do you think I have that stuff from China?" And he kind of laughed and was like, "Nah, don't worry about that." But there was no test back then. So I have no idea if that's what it was or it wasn't. My kids both tested positive for it like a year ago, maybe, or no, sorry. They tested positive the spring of 2021. And I never got it. I never felt sick. So I mean, I was exposed to it, but I didn't, because it's not like my kids were quarantined in the house.
Yeah.
I was like, if I get it, I get it kind of thing. And then I ended up getting vaccinated, just the 2 vaccines. And I haven't had any issues since. Both of my kids are homesick today. There's something going around their school, and everybody's getting sick, but it's not popping up as COVID sick. It's just, influenza is still out there. Kids still get colds and that kind of stuff. And the weather in Colorado at this time of year, it was 65 degrees one day, and then it's, a week later, it's 13 below zero. So, that weather can cause kids to get sick, or anybody, adults to get sick and all that stuff. And I'm not a COVID denier type person. It's real. You can get it.
Yeah, of course.
It can kill you. But statistically saying, for 2 healthy 15-year-olds, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Absolutely not, especially with what's currently going on. For sure. It's not I don't think it's anything to be worried about at all, personally.
No.
I do think.
I read yesterday that the CDC came out, and it was something like 75% of all COVID deaths had 4 COVID morbidity, pre-existing conditions. And you're like, I remember people saying and talking about that stuff last year. You were labeled a nut,
Exactly.
It's like, well, wait a minute. If I, I'm not over whatever the age kind of threshold is for that virus. I'm not obese. I don't have type 2 diabetes. I don't have heart disease. I don't have all these things. Your chances of it taking you out are pretty, it's already pretty slim that you're going to die from it. You could get hospitalized, sure, but death, so I just feel in the long run, once the actual numbers come out and somebody scrubs them, we're going to be like, man, we didn't handle this right.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I'm surprised you personally didn't get the antibodies test before being vaccinated to see if that's actually what you had 2 years ago, because that's what I ended up doing prior. I wanted to see, do I have the antibodies? At the time, I didn't. And then the interesting thing is, prior to getting this, I'm only pulling up my phone so I get the number right. I was like, I wonder how high my antibodies are, because this whole idea that I don't believe in this one size fits all, that everybody needs to be boosted.
Right.
To me, that's kind of ridiculous. So I just wanted to see, okay, what are my actual antibodies? Because if I have high antibodies, I feel I'm good. I did what I needed to, and I'm not interested in this getting a booster every 6 months type of deal. So I looked, and the test says you have to have and this is the actual test I'm looking at. You have to have 0.8, whatever your level is, 0.8 of whatever it is, or greater to have antibodies. And my level was 605.8.
Oh,
so
right.
I was like, this sounds crazy. And I called the lab, and they're like, no, that's accurate. It happens. And at that point I said, all right, I am going to go back to, well, not that I haven't been, but like living my life completely normal, because I feel fine now. There's nothing more that you could possibly do. I don't need any more antibodies pumped into me. And sure enough, after getting this, it was as mild as it gets. I felt a little tired. I got some sleep. That was about it. I did take some supplements, and that was over the counter supplements, and that was all. So
yeah, I have a good friend, and they developed this antigen test kind of thing, antibody test, and they actually got kind of like a cease and desist letter from the FDA saying you can't put this out there yet, kind of stuff. And I'm sure I'm repeating this probably not as accurately as I should, but yeah, they were essentially told you couldn't put this out on the market just yet, and they're waiting to get approval back from the FDA because they didn't like the language that they were using in their kind of sales pitch kind of thing. So it's kind of weird. Yeah. And, but I got vaccinated. I'm a big believer in antibodies. If you have them from natural immunity, or you have them from the shot, that really is what we need. And that's what people need. They don't need I sneezed, go get in line to see if you have COVID and clog up all the COVID testing for people that are legitimately sick. But yeah, if you have an antigen test and you say, yeah, you're 600, you're good. Don't worry about it.
It's not hard to get an antibody test. The thing is, they're not putting it out there as much. It's not on every commercial, but yeah, you could go to any of these places that are doing COVID tests for the most part. A lot of them offer it. And you just walk in there. You don't have to have health insurance. You don't have to have anything, and they will give you your results. With that, we'll get into other things because I always try to kind of steer clear of this stuff on the show because it's all you hear on every media platform, whether it's corporate news or even if you're listening to podcasts. And I try to keep us free of this talk. However, being that I just happen to get it, I guess it's appropriate to get into a little bit. But with that, I guess like the big thing that you've been up to day in and day out has been Tanto Vodka.
It has. It's been the whole. This has been going on for maybe 2 years. We've been working on this project, and
I believe so because actually on the first episode of this podcast, Chris teased out that there was going to be a Tanto Vodka.
Yeah, it's taken in. It hasn't necessarily. It wasn't like it took us that long to figure out how to make vodka. I mean, that part of it was kind of done very quickly with the guys down at Dalton Distillery. I mean, they've been using this recipe for probably close to 100 years. The old man, unfortunately, he did pass away last year, right around this time frame. He was an old school moonshiner, and he ran moonshine for his dad because his dad had polio. So he was like 12 years old driving around in the hills of Tennessee delivering moonshine and stuff. So they had the ability and the distillery and everything to make the vodka. The delay has been in getting distribution. That's been the big delay. And then it just gets into, the whole business world with regards to the distribution companies don't like to take on small products because they take up shelf space. They don't move as fast. So they don't really necessarily want the smaller products. The liquor stores, the same thing. They want to put a product on their shelf that they know they're going to be flushing, through 5 or 6 cases a month. And because it all takes up space. And, the guy working at the liquor store usually doesn't own the liquor store. So he's not necessarily going to be out promoting it and selling it and that kind of stuff. And for us, you have to the whole liquor system is built off of this 3-tiered system. So the distiller can't sell it directly. They have to sell it to the distributor, and then the distributor then has to sell it to the liquor store. Then the liquor store then in turn sells it to the customer. So everybody in that link, if they're not on board and they're not out pushing the product, it's harder to sell. If you just look at it from a salesman standpoint, I have to sell it to 2 people as opposed to 1. Well, actually, I have to sell it to 3 people. I have to sell it to the distribution company. I have to sell it to the liquor store. Then I have to sell it to the customer. It's hard enough to sell something to 1 person, let alone 3. And there's the natural born salesman type people that can just sell. There's all those weird things about sell ice to I know we don't call them Eskimos anymore. The indigenous.
We don't allege. Yeah. Do we really not though, or is that like the super piece?
I don't know. I think what is it? It's Inuits. Is that what they call them? I can't.
I'm sticking with Eskimo. Damn it.
Okay. So, but the saying still kind of applies. You could sell ice to an Eskimo kind of thing. No offense to anybody that lives up there. I'm not one of those people. I'm not. I've tried to be because, I've had some sales jobs with great opportunities in the past. And then you're like, man, I'm just not a salesman. I'm like the kind of guy, do you like the way it tastes? And they're like, yeah, it tastes great. And I'm like, well, then you either want it or you don't. And, we've had very good success with people that we've gotten the product in front of. People, they really enjoy the way it tastes. They like the story. They like the design of the labels and all these kind of things. And so, we have had some success with who we've been in front of. It's just been a little bit slow going, getting it into new states and things like that.
But it is multiple states now, right? I mean, because it was originally, I think that when we were on last time, it was Colorado and that was it, right?
Yeah, we are Colorado, Georgia, California. But the big thing that we gained access to is to be able to sell online. So we can sell now to people in 44 different states. and they can go on to, it's called Great American Craft Spirits. You just search in there Tanto, and it'll pop up, and you order it. They ship it to you. And yeah, as long as you're not in Utah, Alabama, I think Rhode Island, some places that don't allow it, you can just go on and order it, and it'll get shipped to your house.
I don't know if that necessarily is slow progress because, like I said, 1 year ago to this day, just about, you were only selling to one state, and that's quite a lot of progress.
Well, yeah, it is. And considering the size of the operation, which you're seeing, it's not a video podcast, but you can see my office here. It's me, it's me and Chris that are kind of, driving this train, and it's a lot of stuff to try to get done. You contact people, they take a while to get back to you. You go through the conversation, you send them the samples, and then they have to talk to their distributor bosses and this and that, and then it goes back and forth, and then sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. We do have hope on the horizon, we're hoping to get into Tennessee soon. That's looking relatively good for us. Pennsylvania is another one, in Florida are kind of the next hurdles we want to get over. For 2022, we would like to get into Texas. And then, just kind of take one state at a time kind of thing. Have had some interesting conversations lately with some people that I probably shouldn't let the cat out of the bag with regards to who they are. But, very, very famous names in the alcohol industry, spirits world, where if I said their name out loud, 99% of the people would be like, oh, I know who that is. Just because some of these brands have been around for a long, long time. And, trying to get them on board with what we're trying to do we're not trying to become like another Smirnoff or another Grey Goose or this other, giant alcohol brand. We're trying to stay in that craft space. And our big thing is that we don't ever want it to get out of our control with regards to the quality aspect of it. If you look at what a lot of these big names do, and especially in the vodka industry, there's a plant somewhere in Indiana, and they make industrial grade grain alcohol. I mean, they make, thousands and thousands of barrels of it, gallons of it, and then they ship it off to different vodka makers, craft vodka people that say, oh, this is handmade vodka. And then they just run that industrial grade grain alcohol through their stills, their pots, really. And then they say, it's ours, we made it. And then they, so they don't even make their own alcohol. And that's why when you talk to some people and they say, oh, I used to drink this type of vodka, but the taste changed. Doesn't taste the same as it used to. And that's because they went from being able, they kind of made their name and they made their taste with the craft side of it, where they stayed small. They had complete control of it. They were making their own mash. They were making their alcohol, the whole thing. And then they got so big, they couldn't do that anymore. So then they just buy this industrial grade grain alcohol, and then they just kind of run it through their pots and say that they made it there. It's like, well, not really.
Yeah.
You didn't really make it there. And that's why it doesn't taste the same. But that's not something that we don't want to get into that market. We want to stay, and when I say small, we're talking about the 50,000 cases a year kind of is the threshold, for being considered like a craft product. And some of these guys are making a couple million, 5-6 million cases a year. You can't have the same quality control over a product when you're making 10, 100 times, 1,000 times more product. It's just not possible. You talk to anybody that is a chef or a carpenter, anybody, you just can't mass produce excellence. That's kind of the old saying within the special operations community, is you can't mass produce excellence, because they say, oh, look at what these Green Berets are doing in Afghanistan. These guys are great. And the big famous term was force multiplier. And
yeah,
it was like, wow, they're U.S. Army Rangers, the Delta guys. These guys are amazing. They're doing amazing things on the battlefield and this and that. Well, why don't we just make more of them? If we had more of them, we could do better stuff and more stuff. And you're like, well, you can't. It doesn't because the standard's the standard, right? And if you start easing up on the standard, more people get through. The ultimate product is not the same quality person or product. So that's kind of the big thing that we want to convey to everybody is that, this is going to stay relatively small. I mean, I say small, but I'm sure if we're cranking out 50,000 cases a year, I'll be going around like my hair's on fire, busy. But that's fine, right? That's okay. But we want it to stay where we have that control over the quality of the product and it doesn't change. We want to be able to have distributors or bar owners and liquor store owners, if they have something and they need to speak to one of us, they can call me and I'll answer the phone. They say, hey, can we do this? Or can we get Chris out here to do a promotional thing? And if it's feasible, we'll do it. But you know how Chris goes with, he can be so busy too that it's hard to get things to line up. So it's not like anybody that calls, yeah, we'll be there. That's sure. Not going to be the case. But, that's something that we want to be able to do. If you were to go to a bar and they said, hey, Jim Beam's going to be here tonight, you can say, that's pretty cool. That's Jim Beam. But, so that part of it is something that's where we want to keep it. And so when I say it's been slow or something, that's probably me just beating myself up a little bit, because, you make a lot of phone calls, and I'm sure you run into this in your industry as well, where probably 10 phone calls, you might make one connection. One person actually gets back to you and you develop that relationship from there. So it gets old getting told no. It wears you out, man. And, after a week long of phone calls and no's, and everybody wants a sample, oh, send me a sample bottle, send me a sample. And then you send it out and everybody goes, it tastes great and this, that, and we love the story, but we're going to pass. And you just, there's no explanation as to why. Like, well, did we do something wrong on our end that we can fix? And it's usually you get no, it's nothing you did, but there has to be a reason. There's always a reason. And sometimes the reason is these bigger companies will actually incentivize people not to buy your product. And now it's completely legal. It's shady, sure. And it's a little dishonest in the business world, but it's done every day. And you go to a liquor store and the entire liquor store is wrapped up in this big, poster that is advertising another person's product. And you go in and you say, hey, can we put a poster up on the wall or something here? And they go, well, we don't have any space for it because this other company has taken up all that space with their advertising. And they incentivize the people to do that. And I don't like throwing out people's names, but everybody knows, Pappy Van Winkle's whiskey. And everybody's heard the name. And liquor stores only get like 2 or 3 bottles of it, if they get any, in a year. It's so the company that controls that, they'll say, hey, we'll give you another bottle of Pappy's every year if you let us wrap your entire store in this advertising logo. Or just incentivize them to not do business with some of the smaller people because it hurts their business. And again, it's not illegal. It just makes it harder for the smaller craft products to get in the door. But there's always going to be some struggle. There's always going to be a fight and that's the fight that we're fighting right now is, how do you fight for shelf space? It's and then once you get on the shelf, how do you not get lost on that shelf? Yeah,
you also got to deprogram out of people that they have to go with this brand that they see on TV, this thing being pumped constantly. Right. But no, I also want to talk, of course, about what you mainly do at Battleline Tactical and, your gun instructing. And you were saying earlier that you were thinking of going shooting. So is that something that's a part of your life every day, is going to the shooting range, perfecting your craft with that?
It is. I don't get to the range that often just because, ammo's expensive. Time is hard. I have 2 freshmen in high school. My kids are twins. It's not like I have some baby mama drama going on in my house. They're twins. But they're both freshmen in high school. So that, you have my daughter plays lacrosse. My son plays baseball. So you have practices, you have all these things. And to and from school constantly. It's hard to get out to the range, and the outdoor range is 45 minutes away from me. So, and then we have the weather out here where the wind can get so bad. I mean, you can't even keep target stands up. 60, 70 mile an hour winds are not uncommon here. So you can, that can just be a little difficult to shoot in. So it is hard to get out there, but I do work on that kind of the craft side of it every day. Every day I work, whether it's dry fire stuff with my pistol, working on my draw stroke, working on my presentation stuff, working on my grip strength. It's something that I kind of have, in my head, I have different philosophies, I guess, than some people. But to me, if you're going to carry a gun for a living, like a police officer or whatever the case may be, I don't know who else really carries guns for a living other than the police. But if you carry a gun with the idea that I might have to use this someday to save my own life or save the life of my children or my loved ones, or, prevent a forcible felony or something like that, and you don't use that in practice with it at least once a week, to me, that's just epically irresponsible.
Hope you guys are enjoying this interview. We're getting into the firearms topic, and this is actually the perfect transition for many of you who are either on your way to SHOT Show if you're hearing this on Monday. Many of you are probably there already if you work in the firearms industry, or keep in mind, SHOT is an acronym, Shooting, Hunting, Outdoors Trade, really the biggest trade show of its kind. So if you're someone who works in that industry, you may be at SHOT Show, and if you are, you're going to want to check out the PD Pro 16B binocular, which they're doing a giveaway for, an NVG giveaway from Photonis, who is going to be at booth, write this down, booth 41326, doing that giveaway right there in Las Vegas. I'll be hanging out with them. Looking forward to hanging with everybody at Photonis, and I'm actually on my way there as you're hearing this. So Photonis Defense is the global leader in night vision solutions, providing more high-quality night vision capabilities than anyone. Hunters, shooters, boaters, and outdoor enthusiasts rely on Photonis Defense systems to make their adventures safer and more successful. Military, law enforcement, and public safety end users utilize Photonis Defense solutions to give them the edge at night in tactical situations and rescue operations. Photonis Defense is now offering state-of-the-art night vision systems, from the PD Pro B 16mm binocular and the PD Pro M 16mm monocular. You heard me just talk about the PD Pro B 16mm binocular, which once again, they're going to do a giveaway for at SHOT Show, so be there. And this is for the 16B binocular NVG. They're constantly upping their game. They also have the PD Pro Q panoramic night vision system. Customers from all over are excited about these new, smaller, lighter NVGs. You've got to see these things to really experience how much smaller and lighter they are than anything you've used previously. So if you want to get a look at these yourself, and especially if you're not at SHOT Show and you can't be hands-on with it, go to photonisdefense.com. Give everything a look. You're going to learn more information on there, and you'll be able to find Photonis Defense product options from your night vision dealer. Once again, it's photonisdefense.com, photonisdefense.com. We actually talk a little night vision on this episode, which you'll have to stay tuned for, so keep it locked here. And of course, if you're looking for ammo, we know everything is backed up right now, so it's really hard to find, especially online, even from our friends at Fort Scott Munitions, and their first priority is supplying those dealers. So if you have a local dealer by you, a local retail store that sells ammo, you're going to find Fort Scott Munitions. But go to the site and use our promo code if you're looking to pick up any merch, and I would really say to you guys, join the mailing list at fortscottmunitions.com, because they're going to give you an update anytime they do have bulk ammo available. And when you use our promo code, you're going to get 15% off. So if you're buying in bulk, in some cases, that's going to save you. I've seen it save you up to about $150 if you're buying in large bulk. So yeah, Get on it. Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that you receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. So go there now, fortscottmunitions.com, FortScottmunitions.com. Use the promo code Battleline for 15% off your order, only available to listeners of the Battleline Podcast. This is the best ammo on the market. Our listeners who have checked it out love it. They've switched over, and we hope you do as well. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. And with that, back to Ben Morgan. Is there always more to learn, do you think? Do you think you really ever become a complete master of this after 20 years of doing it, or are you always learning something new?
I don't necessarily think you're always learning something new, but you're getting better at applying what you know. And, in shooting, you think about, what are the two biggest aspects are? I mean, it's accuracy and time. Can I make an accurate shot? Now, what do you define as an accurate shot? Point of aim, point of impact. That to me is accuracy. The bullet landed where I wanted it to, whether that's in the chest or in the head. And I'm not a big advocate of headshots because most people just don't have the skill to do it. Your head's only 9% of your body. That's relatively small. Center chest is a much bigger, more forgivable area. There's a lot of vital stuff in here. Not that there's not vital stuff in the head, and the head can pretty much end a fight in the blink of an eye, but it's an extremely hard thing to hit. Especially even for people that put in the work, it's still a difficult shot. And so if most people aren't going to even come close to putting in the work, we don't want that in their mindset that, I'll just shoot them in the head, it'll be over. It's like, well, that's probably not going to happen. So, kind of getting off a little bit, but so to me, that's accuracy. Point of aim, point of impact. Now, but can you do that within the time standard? Well, what's the time standard? Well, that depends. A course of fire should always have a time standard and an accuracy standard because you need to be able to grade yourself and see how you're doing and how you're performing. And that's on a range, and even, training courses and all these things, they're going to have a time standard. But what's the time standard in a gunfight? That's unknowable. So it's kind of always better to be a little bit faster than a little bit slower kind of thing, because you don't know. You just don't know. How fast do I need to be? It's not going to happen like the OK Corral where we face off in the street and it's high noon and we just draw and see who wins. There's going to be a much more dynamic situation than that. But being able to do it quickly and maintain that accuracy, that's always going to be advantageous in a fight. In any sort of combat sport that you can think of, speed is brutal. When you're faster, I've seen little fast dudes just pummel big slow guys in fist fights and bars, and it's kind of the same thing. And you have that speed component that other people don't. It's not going to last very long. I mean, if it takes you 3 seconds to draw your handgun out and get it out, and I can do it in a second and a half, that's it's over. It's like, so you can have the talent or the knowledge to do these things, but it doesn't mean you're going to have the ability to do them unless you practice constantly, because it just diminishes so quick. I mean, you're not
going to be at SHOT Show this year, right?
No, I'm not going.
Because I'll be there, but is there anything that you think is like doing big things in the industry and types of innovation right now? I know oftentimes, like when we had John Bartolo on recently. He was saying how like the gun industry kind of recycles a lot of the same things and tries to make it look new and shiny, and there's only so much that you can do. But is there anything in particular that you've been seeing, like whether it's in guns or accessories, that you're like, this is awesome, I've been waiting for this?
I mean, I started that dry fire business, and I developed that whole thing. And even to this day, I still, sometimes people go down business ventures and they're thinking, man, that was a dumb idea. That's why it didn't work. Well, my idea didn't work, but I still to this day don't think it was dumb. I still think it has validity 100% across the board. Sometimes it just doesn't stick. But there is that, you've heard of Mantis X.
Yes.
They kind of, they were able to do what I wanted to do, kind of thing. Sometimes you get beat, right? Well, they beat me. And they developed a thing called a Blackbeard. And it's essentially an AR-15 or an M4 bolt system that allows you to dry fire with your AR without having to run the charging handle in between every shot. And that system to me is and you can use it with the Mantis X system, and it gives you all this feedback on your phone and all these kind of things, and it really gives you a lot of information. And then you can take that and still do the same drills live fire, and then you can kind of compare how you do in your dry fire as opposed to your live fire. And then there's a lot of information that you can ascertain from that. If you're really good when you're dry firing and then you kind of fall apart when it's live fire, to me that means you probably have an extreme reaction to recoil sensitivity, and it kind of the fear of the recoil. If you can't get that out of your head, you're never going to be able to be a good shooter. It's just it just isn't going to work. And it's normal. I mean, it's a controlled explosion going off right in front of your face. To not have some sort of adverse reaction to that is not normal, but you have to train that reaction out of yourself. And you have to learn that you can control it or manage it, I guess is a better way to say it. You can't control it, but you can manage it. And once you get that part of your shooting out of that wrinkle out of your system, then you can kind of move on to the next level. But if you have that flinch, so to speak, you're kind of chasing your tail. You have to get that out of your system. And there's drills you can do that are very simple to get it out. But you have to be willing to do it. When we teach in the courses, we have, it's like we kind of have students buddy up kind of thing. And I'll let you load the other guy's pistol kind of deal. And, we have all the safety measures in place to keep it as safe as possible. But you don't know if you're going to have a bullet in your gun or not, kind of thing. Am I going to get a click or am I going to get a bang? And when you don't know what's coming, you kind of react to it the same way as if you're going to get the bang, And then when you get the click, it shows the shooter a lot of what they're doing wrong. Because I can tell by your shots, and sometimes I can just tell by looking at your hands when you pull the trigger, you're flinching. You're anticipating this recoil, and people will do it in different ways, but most people try to push the gun flat. Right in that millisecond that they pull the trigger, they try to push the gun flat, and it causes the rounds to go to the left, or to go low, I'm sorry. But what they also do is they're pulling that trigger, they tend to tighten their hands, squeeze the gun, hold onto it tighter right before it goes off. And that can twist the gun around in your hand if you don't have a solid grip. So you get a lot of the low left style shooting because most people are right-handed. And if that's what you're doing, to me, you're having a recoil issue, which can be fixed with proper grip and grip strength and stuff. But if you don't know you're doing it as the shooter, you don't believe me. I can tell you. People go, I'm not doing that. And then when they get that click and you see that front sight, or you see the gun really dip in their hand, and you're at 5 yards and you're like, yeah, dude, that 5 yard shot that you're shooting 8 inches, a foot low at 5 yards, you're putting rounds in the dirt if you're at 15, because of the flinch. So you have to get that out of your system. And if you don't shoot a lot, it creeps back in. It just shows back up. And so you do need to shoot a lot. You do need to practice a lot. And that Mantis stuff, it makes dry firing a little bit more enjoyable because you get some feedback. You can get timed feedback. You can get accuracy feedback. What kind of inputs are you putting into the gun that are causing you to get a bad result? And then you can kind of work them out as you go. So I do work on it every day. But as far as innovation in the firearms industry, it's a lot of just recycled stuff. I mean, they try to sell you things you don't need. You look at aftermarket triggers and handguns is a huge thing. Everybody always like, what's the trigger like? What's the trigger like? And you're like, in a lot of ways, does it work? Does the trigger work? It works. Okay. Then I don't get too wrapped around the axle with regards to these triggers, because, the 1911 style trigger, the single action only trigger, it has been viewed for over 100 years now as kind of the best trigger that there is. And it's like, yeah, it's a great trigger, but it doesn't really make any difference when you're shooting in, say, like a combat environment, or even in competition where they're shooting very fast and things along those lines. That really, really crisp break of the trigger and all of those kind of things, it doesn't really matter. If you're a bullseye shooter and you're looking for a really short reset and this really light trigger break so that you're not having to squeeze any harder to get the gun to go off, which can induce mistakes, they're great. But that kind of became the standard. Everybody wants to say, well, what's it feel like compared to a 1911 trigger? And they're not going to feel the same. A striker fired handgun, the way the trigger bar and the way the safety mechanisms and all that stuff works in there with the pre-travel, the over-travel, and even the way the trigger breaks in itself, it's not going to break the same as a 1911 because they're just two completely different designs in the gun. And so everybody's like, well, we need aftermarket triggers that feel closer to the 1911. And you're like, well, you don't. I mean, I understand how people don't like too much over travel. They don't like too heavy of a trigger. As long as your trigger's breaking in that 4 to 6 pound range, everything else is kind of just semantics. And so you can take a stock Glock trigger, which they're not great, the stock SIG trigger, they're not great either. But that's not what's causing you to not shoot well. You know what I mean? So now everybody takes these aftermarket triggers, and a lot of them are just OEM parts that somebody went in and polished. And then they might change some of the springs in there that, a 5-6 pound spring now gets cut down to a 3 or 4 pound spring. So it doesn't feel as heavy. Well, it's not as heavy, but that spring weighs that much out of the factory for a reason, because it needs to be able to create enough force to set off primers consistently on your striker. Well, if you start getting light strikes and things like that, that usually means your firing pin spring is too light or it's been worn out and you need to get a new one. Well, that became a huge thing in the industry, is all these aftermarket triggers. And some of them are $150, $250. And you look at them, and they've gotten me a few times. I bought a few, I'm not going to lie. But when you take it apart and you look at it, and you're like, most of this is just OEM parts that have been polished up. They lighten up a spring or two here or there, but it doesn't change the way the trigger works. And $250 on this trigger is not going to really make you a good shooter. You would be better off spending $250 to take a shooting course, spend that money on ammo, spend that on a dry fire system, and put that to work. I've never had an instructor, I've never had an instructor say, you need a better trigger in your gun. It just, that's not the solution. It's just not. And so the firearm industry, they want you to buy the new shiny toy, the new gun kind of thing that, we changed and they make the smallest changes in the world to these guns, and people run out and buy them. And then when you say, have you taken a course to learn how to shoot? And they go, well, I can't afford that.
Yeah, that's definitely poor allocation of
right.
What you're using your money to.
And I'm like, dude, you have 30 handguns and you're not any good with any of them. Maybe you should sell off 10 of them and then spend a year or two training on that with that money.
I think it's like a product of consumerism for everything in America, unfortunately, which, I think people sometimes equate to capitalism. And I think they're two different things. Capitalism is, the exchange of goods and services through currency. But to me, consumerism is the idea of I have to have it all. I have to have the biggest collection of everything. And as you're saying, that none of that really matters if you're not if you don't really know your equipment, know what you're using.
Exactly. And it is. I mean, that's what they want. They want you just to consume more stuff.
I got to buy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what drives the train, right? I mean, it's all this big illusion, really, that, I get up every morning and you go to work to make money so I can buy shit that I don't need.
Yeah.
And, and then you buy it and you get it and you're like, wow, that felt great. And then 5 minutes later, you're like, well, what's the next thing that I need? Well, I better
and the best things in life are the things that you really need to strive. It is a craft that you really could become better and better on, whether it's working out.
Absolutely.
Those are the best feelings when someone could say, I gained all this strength, or I learned this new trait, or I learned a new language or something. Yeah. As opposed to I bought this. And people do need to realize that all of that is temporary. That's never gonna fix this hole inside of you. Like, we're here to move around and do things and create and learn whether, like I said, new languages, new ideas, reading new books. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And, the firearms industry is just another industry, and so, I mean, I grew up skiing, and so skis, every year the new skis would come out, and as a kid, I didn't have any money. So I'd go down to the sporting goods store and you stare at this wall of skis and you're like, man, all these new skis, if I had new skis, I'd be a better skier and all this kind of stuff. And you just stare at them and you're like, there's really very, very little change in the equipment. Now, the ski industry did develop better skis in the early 2000s timeframe, and that technology actually has significantly changed the skiing industry and the way people ski and how well they can ski. You don't have to be as good as you used to be to enjoy more difficult terrain. The skis have actually made it easier to be a good skier. Made good skiers great, made decent skiers good, that kind of stuff. But as far as the firearms industry goes, I haven't seen anything like that. That's, there's been a lot of innovation on the optics side of things, and with night vision and that kind of stuff, that has significantly changed in the last 20 years. But as far
shout out to Photonus night vision.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That stuff, it's insane. I was out in Georgia last year in the spring with this company, and they were showing off the military their newest and latest and greatest in night vision. And I hadn't really worn any night vision in probably 10 years, close to 10 years. And I was blown away at how good this stuff was. It was insane. I mean, when I was in the Ranger Regiment, granted, this was, in the 90s, and, Clinton wasn't exactly a huge fan of the military. So our funding suffered and those kind of things. So we didn't have the greatest equipment that there was, but we had better equipment than 90% of the Army did. And, but we would go out and we would wear night vision, and you were lucky if you could see 150 yards.
I've heard Chris say this as well.
Right. That was like the big deal. I could see 150 yards. We had good illume, those kind of things. But that's just the way it was. Right. So fast forward to me standing out in this peanut field out in Georgia, and this guy gives me these new night vision goggles, and I'm looking across this field, and it's 1,000 yards across this field, and I can make out individual tree trunks 1,000 yards away with this new night vision. And when you think about the application of that, it's a huge, massive advantage to be able to see like that, and the clarity of it, and the crispness, and the outlines of the stuff that you're looking at. It really blew me away. And then, so that's just the night vision side. They switched from these green phosphorus tubes to white phosphorus tubes. And I'm not smart enough to really explain the difference and what it is. But, when on TV, when they show the night vision kind of scene, and it's all green and really grainy and that kind of stuff. Now it looks just kind of black and white, and you can really make things out, and it's impressive. It really is. And
do you know around when it got to that level where it's like this on this level that it is now?
Honestly, I think probably in the last 5 years. So they've probably been testing it for 10. But
which is pretty cool to see, because the fact that I am not an expert in this field at all, but I've gone to multiple SHOT Shows. I've been going since, I think at this point it's probably been, man, I can't even remember how long. It's definitely been over 10 years at this point for me. Scattered about it. I don't go every year, but depending on like what company I'm with, and now being with Battleline going, but yeah, guys like Jack Murphy, who I've gone with, do say when they go every year, like to me, when I go to the range day, which I haven't gotten to do in ages, I don't think I'll be able to do it this year, but I'm not in this world. So to me, shooting all this stuff, I'm like, this is awesome. Wow, this is so cool. And someone like Jack Murphy, who's seen it all, is just like, yeah, the gun industry hasn't really updated anything. This is all kind of the same thing. So it is a big deal when you hear that in the past 5 years, at least one aspect of the industry has really innovated.
Oh yeah, and it's so when you think about it, this is what they're showing off to the public. The stuff that's being tested right now is probably even better. The stuff they're keeping behind closed doors. But yeah, the night vision, the thermal stuff has gotten insane as well. I mean, back in the day, we had thermal optics, but they were huge. I mean, they were like the size of a shoebox, and we only used them on mounted stuff because they were too heavy to carry around. You couldn't carry that thing. But now they have little thermal scopes that you can hold in your hand, and it's just amazing. And they don't weigh what they used to weigh. They don't chew up batteries the way they used to chew up batteries. You look at the advancements in like GPS technology. I mean, we used to have these big things. They were called pluggers. It was like a brick. You had to carry this brick around, and the batteries you chewed up batteries in 30 minutes. So you had to have a ton of spare batteries, which just adds to the weight that everybody has to carry. They didn't work very well. You would sit there and wait for them to log on or to get onto satellites and to confirm your position kind of stuff. These guys are now it's a watch. They got GPS on their wrist, and it's probably 100 times more accurate than what we had. And so you take the getting lost component and you minimize that for the individual soldier. It's a huge advantage to be able to see in the dark, minimize your getting lost, which happens all the time. It's kind of even back in the day when we had maps and compasses and protractors, people weren't always the best at doing it because it was hard. It is hard. I mean, trying to navigate in the pitch dark, and you're tired out of your mind, and you haven't eaten and all these kind of things, and you drift a little bit one way or the other. Just being off by 2 or 3 degrees over in 1,000 yards, 2,000 yards, you're gone, man. You're lost. So these GPS advancements are huge. The optics stuff has gotten, just incredible. I was reading an article the other day, and the Army adopted this new optic for their squad automatic weapon, which their saw, their machine guns, those kind of things. And it's made by Vortex, but it has like a ballistic computer inside of it. It has, rangefinders inside of it, and it just has all of these advancements in this little itty bitty small package that makes the person behind the machine gun that much more accurate, that much more lethal, that much more effective. Suppressive fire is an amazing thing, but it has to be accurate, and these things allow the accuracy to be improved, which just makes the lethality of the individual soldier so much better. But yeah, the firearm in itself, I haven't seen anything where you're just blown away or even really that surprised by, where you're like, holy cow, this is that term. This is a game changer. That gets thrown around all the time, and you hear it a whole lot.
It's a marketing tool at this point.
Right.
Everything is a game changer.
It's
almost like how when you turn on the news now, everything is Fox News alert or whatever they all. Not everything can be an alert. Not everything could. It loses its meaning at that point.
Exactly. I check about 3 or 4 news sources a day. I don't watch the news anymore because I just can't.
I really don't either. I'll watch Tucker Carlson now and again because he discusses a lot of things that people aren't. And look, I'm not saying it's not a biased news source. Of course it is, because most of the unbiased stuff, or the least bias, I'll try to read online, whether it's AP or all that. But no, I don't watch much of it all anymore.
No, because it is. And if you don't believe that, then you should go back and watch like some propaganda films from the 40s and 50s. And if you can't pick up the language and the messaging that they're trying to do in those videos and say, that's exactly what CNN, that's exactly what Fox, they're doing the same thing now. It's just, they got, a much more attractive girl to give you the news, or a much more attractive guy to give you the news. And it is, the sky's falling every day. But with those headlines, one of the things that I've seen is Joe Biden's, popularity or approval numbers plummet again. Plummet. Well, you can't plummet. You know what I mean? And then you go in and you read the article, and it's like, well, his approval, it dropped 2 or 3 points. Like, was that really a plummet?
Yeah, it's very low though at the moment. Though, to be fair, it's like the lowest of anyone in like modern history, I believe.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I mean, the guy is he's not there. He's something's off. One of the big things I don't understand. I mean, he's had 2 aneurysms.
Yes,
in his life, and if you ever go in and read what most people die when they have an aneurysm. I think it's like 60%, 70% of the people that have aneurysms don't make it. So you're left with 30% survival rate. That 30% that do survive, I forget the numbers again, but it's very, very high, have some sort of neurological damage, because the nature of the surgery that they use to go in to fix the aneurysm. You have a bleed in your brain. They have to get to the bleed, so they have to cut into your brain to get to it. But when you cut into somebody's brain, you're damaging those neuromotor pathways. They just don't, I don't know if you've ever had any major surgeries.
No.
But if you talk to people that have had major surgeries, as the nerves grow back together, you can feel it sometimes, just because the connections are being reestablished. Well, not all of those connections get reestablished. It's just a fact. And this guy's had 2 of them. Yeah. So you're like, the guy more than likely has some sort of neurological damage. It's just, I wouldn't say it's a medical fact, but it's the statistical likelihood that he has some sort of damage. And that damage doesn't get better as you get older. It gets worse. And
we're also just electing like older leaders than ever before. That's a problem as well. What's the last thing I wanted to ask you about, though, because I'm sure people do want to hear about this, what Battleline Tactical is up to this year. Because it looks like it's less classes this year, and I know a lot of that has to do with Chris's schedule, the fact that Chris does a lot of these speaking engagements, which runs into the podcast now and again, and I understand. I mean, it's not hard to look up through, like, Chris talks about Kepler Speakers Bureau. Like, these are very high-paying events that he does for corporations, and I wouldn't be able to turn those down either. So those get priority. I don't envy him in terms of the speaking aspect, because I'm not very into the whole public speaking thing, but Chris is great at it. I mean, if you even just go on YouTube and look up some of the speeches Chris has done, he's gotten better and better at them, and that's why he's in such high demand. But like I said, it looks like it's going to be a few less classes this year. So I would say to people that if you could find something within a 3-hour or so radius, make the drive, man. You're going to have a great time.
Yeah, it definitely makes the scheduling of that difficult, because the speaking stuff does have priority. The vodka side of things does have priority. I started working in some stuff in the TV and film industry, behind the camera stuff. Well, I shouldn't even say behind the camera, because I'm not the guy behind the camera. Far cry from that. But being on set with these TV shows and the filming and stuff like that. So, that's taken up a lot of time, because I was in the Bahamas, and nobody wants to hear a sob story about you having to go to work in the Bahamas for 10 days. But I did. I went to the Bahamas for 10 days and worked on this TV show. So, that's 10 days that you're gone from your family and things like that. And then it's extremely difficult to come straight back from a trip like that and then go straight into a training course. I did it in, I want to say we taught a course in November, and I had just gotten back either from the Bahamas or this trip to Charleston for the same TV show. And I went straight from that and taught the course down in Fort Worth. And I don't think I wasn't lagging in my ability to teach. And I think everybody that attended the course got the full amount of information and got 100% of my attention. But when I came home, I was just smoked. I was just gassed. I mean, you don't, and it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you're standing in front of, 20 people and you have to talk for 8 or 10 hours straight, and not just talk, you have to be on, because you have to identify that mistake before it becomes a catastrophic mistake. And you get somebody, 1 or 2 people in class that they're not really doing it on purpose, but they just don't have their weapons handling skills at a point where you really feel safe around them. And not that you ever let up on the safety side of things. Safety is one of those things that's kind of always in the front of your mind. But when you have somebody that's new to the gun and you can tell that they're really nervous and things like that, they do things that can be pretty close to unsafe. So you have to have that extra attention on that 1 or 2 individuals. And for 8 or 10 hours, 2 days in a row, I was smoked. I really was. And so I know where Chris is coming from when he has to go and do those public speaking events. There's a lot more to it that people don't see with regards to the meetings and the things that go on before the event. And he has to speak. And then after the event, he has to go and meet people and talk and all these things. And it's not that you don't enjoy it. You do, 100%. It takes its toll. So we have kind of backed off on having a lot of classes. And, so the courses we might teach, as opposed to teaching a course 2 a month, we're going to probably do maybe 1 a month kind of thing. They might be bigger in the grand, the number of students and things that are in there, but we're still going to bring in more instructors. We'll kind of break up the course so you can go get your medical stuff. You can still go get your kind of hand-to-hand. You can get the pistol work. You can get the rifle work, all of those things. So there might be less of them, but they're going to kind of be bigger courses with regards to the amount of information that we're putting out there. But it's just kind of one of those things. It's hard. It's hard to organize when you have all of these other things going on, but we still do feel that it's important. Again, we say this all the time. It's not that we say, oh, you have to come and train with us to get good information. I don't believe that at all. There's probably dozens of legit instructors out there, guys that are putting out great information, guys that have even, tremendous amounts of more experience than I do, and they're great guys to go learn from. There's Hades Consulting. These 2 guys, they retired out of the unit, and they're traveling all over the country teaching people to shoot. And I went and shot with those guys last year, and yeah, I mean, dude, it's legit, man. They're phenomenal shooters, great shooters, have great experience, great amount of knowledge coming out. This guy, X-Ray Alpha, same thing, phenomenal shooter, 10, 12 years in the unit. I mean, these guys are shooting.
So funny how you have to say the unit. The audience knows who we're talking about.
It's and this other guy, Brad Thomas. He was a Delta guy, unit guy. He was Ranger Battalion. Went to the Delta.
You said the word. You're not allowed to.
Well, he said it the other day. He's like, "Oh, I went from RRD to Delta," and so I'm like, "Well, if guys that actually went to Delta are saying that they went to Delta, I don't feel as bad."
I think some of them, don't care. I mean, look, Pat McNamara, right? Another great instructor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just that a lot of us being old, you remember when people didn't say those words, especially in public. Everybody knew, not everybody, but guys in Ranger Regiment all knew that Delta existed, but it just wasn't something that people said out loud.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of great instructors out there, though. Jeff Gonzalez, Navy SEAL. There's a ton of guys who we got to get on as well. He's awesome. But what areas do you guys think that you're hitting? For those wondering, where are you going to be teaching in 2022? We will be in down
at Eddie Ranji's place in Kiefer, Oklahoma. I think that one's in May. We'll be back at Defenders Outdoors in Fort Worth. We will be out in Indiana, Scott Wheels' place out there, Briggs Core Dynamics. And then the guys at Fort Scott are kind of standing up a little bit of a range complex facility by them. And so Chris's proximity to Fort Scott cuts down his travel time and things like that. So once we get things kind of going with the Fort Scott place, we might start using that more frequently and people can come in. I mean, obviously it's centrally located in the country, being in Fort Scott, Kansas, not the most difficult place to get to. You can drive, 2 to 3 hour drive from there. That's a massive amount of the country right there. So we're probably going to teach there a little bit as well. We don't have the full list out just yet because, again, with Chris's speaking, that takes kind of priority. The things with the vodka business, if I have somewhere I have to go to deal with that, that takes priority over the shooting courses. So we're going to be scattered about the country a little bit, but it's we're not going to be going anywhere too far away from kind of the central, Midwest areas, and kind of stay in there just so Chris can drive. You can drive there and drive back, and it doesn't eat up 2 or 3 days of travel getting somewhere.
I would love to visit the Fort Scott facility if that, because they've been a sponsor this entire time, and that would be cool if that becomes the headquarters for the business and that you guys do stuff there. I would love to check it out. People have been saying to me, you got to come out to a course. I definitely would love to. I mean, but for the audience, don't expect much from me. This is not, I am probably way more of a beginner than most of you guys. But I definitely would love to check it out. So,
people will say that. They say, I don't feel I have the experience to come take the course. And in my head, I'm like,
you won't get it otherwise. Yeah.
Well, you're the exact person that needs the course.
Yes.
Those are the people that really need to come and learn. Because it's like anything else that to me, it's just irresponsible to not know what you're doing with that gun. And the fact that your dad taught you how to pull the trigger 30 years ago, that doesn't mean you know how to shoot. I can go buy I don't know if you could buy one, but you can go buy a Ferrari supercar or buy an F1 car. That doesn't mean I know how to drive it. Sure. I know how to drive, but I'm not you know what I mean? So
yes,
if you're going to have one, which, I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, thinking that I'm against the Second Amendment. Because, man, you say
obviously
something.
Not.
Wow, I mean, that crowd turns on you, you're screwed, right? Because I believe in it 100%. I've obviously I've read the Constitution. I've read, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the papers that were written, but the papers that were written that were basically arguing back and forth on whether or not we should have a big centralized federal government or should we have a decentralized federal government and let the states make these decisions more on their own. And it was basically them pleading their case. It was a debate, and it explained the reasons behind the Second Amendment, what the mentality was and why we needed it and all these kind of things, as opposed to just saying that it wasn't just people should have the right to own a gun. That wasn't the argument into why we needed the Second Amendment. The Federalist Papers, that's what they're called.
Yeah.
So if you go in and you read all of those, and I think it's the 25th paper that was written is really one that's devoted towards the argument as to why you need the Second Amendment and people need to have the right to own a gun, kind of thing. I've read all that stuff and I still believe it. I believe it to this day that, a tyrannical government is a possibility. People think, oh, we're so advanced that could never happen. Yeah, okay. We had a run on toilet paper in this country.
Yeah.
People are panicky. People panic. That's just human nature. So I 100% believe and support the Second Amendment all day long, but that doesn't mean I support irresponsible gun ownership. I don't support irresponsible voting. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean I'm against people having the right to vote. I do believe you should educate yourself on who you're voting for, why you're voting for them, and all of those kind of things. And I look at it as the same with a gun. You have the right to own one 100%, but you have the responsibility to know what you're doing with it. You kind of have to make those statements, because when you come out and you say something bad about people owning guns, they turn around and throw that on you that, oh, you don't like the Second Amendment. It's like, well, nothing could be further from the truth. But if you own a gun, you need to know what you're doing with it. And you're not going to really learn it probably properly from YouTube, because you don't know who you're listening to on YouTube and things like that. Are there good instructors?
And also you don't have someone watching you and seeing what you're doing correctly or not correctly. You're not going to be the best critique of yourself. You need someone watching over you and noticing those small things that you're doing wrong. Right. I mean, I don't even say this from a firearms perspective, because I say it as someone who's a certified personal trainer. If you're going to learn these things, you're not going to be able to see what you're doing wrong through YouTube. It is a good resource to have for sure, but you also need a second opinion of someone who is an expert to look over you and point out what you can fix and what you can improve.
Right, because if you're doing something mechanically wrong, and most of shooting is just mechanics. Outside of the explosion going off in front of your face, shooting mechanically is a pretty easy thing to do. It's just hard to implement because of that explosion, and also the dynamics of the situation that you're using that gun in are usually life-threatening. So the stress side of shooting is what makes it difficult. But mechanically, it's not that hard. And the same thing, like you're saying with personal training, lifting weights is not necessarily that hard if you're lifting weights that you can manage. But if you're mechanically doing it incorrectly, you're just reinforcing that mistake without somebody saying, this is what you're doing wrong. We need to keep an eye on that. And every time you make that mistake, somebody needs to be there to say, stop, you're making the mistake, fix it, start over, fix it, start over, fix it. Because if you just go out and you just shoot, you're just reinforcing what you're already doing wrong. You're like, how come I'm not getting any better? Because you're just making the same mistakes. You have to have somebody there to say, this is what you're doing wrong. This is how to fix it. This is why you're making that mistake. And then not let you just, take that information and run off with it. You have to take that information and then basically start back from square one and say, okay, I got this. Yeah, you can go from square one to square 100 quick, let's say, when you have somebody standing over you and watching you and saying, this is what you're doing wrong. Look at your feet, look at your grip, look at this, look at that. If there's not somebody there to do that, you don't realize you're making those mistakes. We'll have people out on the flat range and we'll shoot, and they're doing good and they're getting it. And then you take them in and do a little bit of force on force kind of stuff. And, they might go through one or two rooms, and then you're like, look at your grip. And their grip is just completely gone by the second room. And you're like, your foundation is not there yet, because you can't keep that base information in a dynamic situation. If you can't apply fundamentals under stress, you haven't mastered those fundamentals. And most people don't get to that point because they want to run before they crawl, kind of thing. But if you don't have somebody watching over you constantly saying, you're making a mistake, and it can be redundant and it can be irritating. And I've seen students you can almost hear that voice in their head, like, man, would this guy shut the fuck up? But at the same time, you're just like, well, then do it. If you're tired of me telling you to do it the right way, do it the right way, and you won't hear from me again. And but that only comes from thousands and thousands of repetitions of practice. And I'm not the best shooter. I'm not far from it, man. You watch some of these guys that are world-class grandmaster shooters and stuff, and they may not know anything more, and I might not know less than they do, but their ability to apply that knowledge is above and beyond mine, but I don't shoot 150,000 rounds a year. And that's what it takes to be that good.
Yeah, just exactly repetitions and putting in those 10,000 hours, as they say.
Right.
So with that, TantoVodka.com, check it out. That's where you can now order online, which you were not able to do last year. And on Instagram at Real Tanto Vodka. So this was great, man. It's been an entire year, and thanks for doing this with me while Chris has been out doing speaking. And for the audience, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We need those reviews, and subscribe wherever you're listening, whether it's YouTube, Spotify. Be sure to subscribe and listen to us every Monday. And eventually we will get to doing the live stream type of thing with video and super chats. That's definitely in the works. That will be not very soon, but it'll be soon.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American straight talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoparanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.